Yeah, it's very interesting.
Controversy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I don't expect you to buy into it, but I just thought it would give you a different perspective.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay, before we get started tonight, I had a call from a citizen earlier this week that was questioning as to why we've had a lot of absence lately, people on Zoom and things like that. So, I'm going to address the elephant in the room. We've had some people that have been exposed to COVID. We've had some people that have gotten COVID itself. Talking to Carter, our numbers within the organization are starting to rise again of people that are sick in the organization. So I'm going to leave it up to everybody in the room and all the council members. If this is too close to quarters for people, let me know, and we'll certainly move it back out into the chambers. If not, we'll stay where we're at. We'll leave it a choice to people whether they wear masks in here or not. I'm not going to tell anybody that they have to, but just simply putting that out there across the board, whatever makes everybody feel comfortable and the best. Let me know your thoughts on it. So, all right. So, and I think that Councilman Johnson will just be late getting here.
Well, since we're off the record, I did get a negative test that I turned in last week, I think it was. And I also had the antibodies, so. Just so, I guess, FYI.
Yeah. Yep. The question was brought up to me. I got a phone call from somebody that shows up quite regularly, and just he has noticed that we've had quite a few gone, and so I explained to him that people have vacations here too, so you're going to go do your thing vacation-wise, but yes, we've had some exposures and stuff, and so.
And that is okay to do as long as we're Skyping in or whatever, correct?
Yep. Yep. So, all right. So we will get going. Do we have anything from the council meeting from last week?
Mr. Mayor, I do not have anything in that for that item.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. And then we'll move on to telecommunication right-of-way use agreement with Advanced Communications Technology Incorporated, doing business as Range. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I could, the attorney's office has been working on this use agreement with Range for quite some time, and so if it's okay with you, I'll defer to Mr. Henley and Mr. Trimbath.
Okay. Mr. Trimbath?
Mayor, Council, thanks for giving us the opportunity to just present this very briefly. This is really a pretty simple item. Usually when a telecommunications company comes in and wants to run fiber optic, we have a franchise agreement with them that lets them run under essentially all public right-of-ways and streets and go wherever they need to go to get to their lines where they need to get them. In this case, they had a very limited number of lines that they needed to put in, and they're not sure if they're going to put any more in or not. So a full franchise agreement that covered every street really didn't make any sense. So we turned to Gillette to find a model. Gillette has this exact model almost, and we used their pricing and their numbers, which had been previously agreed to be fair with that company. And they seem to be really happy to be able to get the 6 runs that they essentially needed to put in right now. And if their business model changes, where they need to run all over the city, then we can very easily turn this into a full-fledged franchise agreement to stay consistent with all the other telecommunications companies that are here. We've built an escalator into this. They pay $1.52 per foot initially to get their line in, and then 12 cents per foot every year thereafter for maintaining it, with a 2.9% escalator every year. The agreement goes for 5 years, renews for 5 years automatically, and it can be added on to very easily if they just have a few runs, or turned into a full-fledged franchise agreement. And other than that, it's pretty simple and straightforward. So if you have any questions, I'm here.
Just one.
Councilman, no.
Thank you. Is this the new company that or is this an existing?
Mr. Mayor, this would be a new license that we are working on. I think the one you're thinking of is Vast.
It is.
Yeah, and they were a full-blown franchise agreement.
Yes, Vast wants to run all over the city,
Yeah.
providing services to everyone. These guys have a really limited clientele right now.
So is this a cell phone company?
It's a
I just-
fiber optic company.
Okay, because I was just curious if it was going to interrupt with Spectrum's got going on, with what we approved with Vast and everything else. It just seems like we've got a lot kind of happening in the same areas.
Yeah, and that's a good thing. We have lots of companies who want to be here.
They can use each other's fibers, right?
They,
Fiber lines
They can
that,
certainly decide if they want to lease out the fibers to another company or not.
okay.
Sure.
Council.
Is this giving us any angst, so to speak, with the other full-fledged franchisees wanting a similar deal for their, like Vast coming in and just starting? So would they want to try to come back to us and say, hey, until we get up to this size, we want their agreement, otherwise you're not playing fair with us?
I mean, fairness is always an issue we consider. I don't see Vast or anyone else wanting this deal because honestly it's kind of a pain in the neck, and I'll tell you why. If you're this company, in order to run a new line, you have to go get a new legal description and footages, and then you have to go through the council process to amend this agreement to add another line every time you want to add something. And
Okay.
the other companies do not want to do that right now.
Okay,
As far as I know.
that was all I was curious about, because yeah, I noticed all of the legalese and everything else. Now, is this, and I have, as a follow-up,
Sure.
is this the company out of Montana that in some of the northern parts of the state, you'll go out and you'll see range communication listed on the line markers and stuff?
I haven't driven in Montana.
No,
my
this is
guess
in
would-
Wyoming.
My guess would be yes, because they do business as range.
Okay,
So
Yeah,
my
'cause
guess is that's the same company.
they're out around Lysite and out in that area
Okay.
15 years ago.
Oh,
So that's why I was wondering. Okay.
Any other questions? Okay,
all right.
thank you.
Thank you.
The only thing I would add, we did something really similar with Mammoth Communications not too long ago, and so this is very similar to what you've done very recently. And like Wallace said, if they get to the point where they want to provide a more broad, widespread service provision across the community, you will likely see them come to you for a franchise level agreement. So.
Something I did notice is on one of their maps, they have two McKinley Streets. And McKinley Street is McKinley Street, but the second McKinley Street is actually Jackson. So I don't know whether somebody wants to change that or not.
We will follow up on that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's on page 35.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Mayor.
Okay. Move on to public education process for the optional 6-cent tax, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I may have mentioned this in the past, but as we've talked about the 6 cent coming up and so forth, the only role that a city and the city of Casper can take in supporting this or participating in this in any way is with regard to public education. What it is that the ballot is proposing, the city or any other governmental entity in the state of Wyoming do not have the blessing to ask for a vote. And so we have to be really, really careful about the distinction that we take when we're out visiting with Rotary or when we're out communicating with the public at large. We can only educate and inform. We cannot, lobby, if you will, or request a particular vote take place. To that extent, and given that we have not had, as a community, as a county, a lot of success with regard to a 6 cent proposal or a cap tax proposal, we thought it would be helpful to procure the services of a professional in this field that could help us educate and inform the community with regard to the role that this type of mechanism can play in a community in Wyoming. We all know that the request that we're putting out there is not a large one. We anticipate that this request, if successful, could basically be done in a quarter or two in our county. And you'll remember that this is the request that we have to the community, requesting the last phase for Midwest Avenue, as well as the last phase of that water line in Midwest and Edgerton. It's just those two projects that are being proposed for the community. Loom is the professional team that we have brought into the mix here to try to help us get through this process and inform the public as to the proposal being put in front of them. And they've got a plan, if you will, to get that word out there. And so I was hoping I could take some time this evening to give you the perspective, if you will, of what it is that we are endeavoring to do. Pete is helping us from the staff perspective in exercising this contract, if you will. And we have Loom here this evening to kind of walk us through what this process will look like. And so if it's okay with you, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to invite Loom up to walk us through that. Good.
I'll scooch this way because I'm sure Amber can only see my legs. Hi guys, I'm Julie. I'm going to be the account manager for this project. So that means I'll be kind of the point of contact, mainly working with Pete and whatnot. But I kind of wanted to just walk you guys through what our process is and what our plan will be. And sorry, I took my notes because I was a little nervous. But so really the big part, and he mentioned it, is that we're going to be focused on education, not a campaign, and we're going to be really clear and concise about our messaging and make sure that it's, really the focus is just giving everybody the correct information so that they know the vote is happening, they know what's on there, and really spreading that out through the community. And kind of our purpose through that is that we're going to be meeting with Pete tomorrow and really hashing out the details of it, what the campaign will look like, the different individual components of it, and that is set for a meeting tomorrow, like I said. But kind of how our process works is we meet and really get into the details of it, and then as a team, we'll be working on specifically messaging for the campaign that's concise, obviously all the facts that they need, but then be able to disperse it so that anyone that's talking about it has all of those and all the messaging aligns and is consistent. And so that'll be our first phase, is really working on that and making sure it has consistency as anyone is speaking about it. And then we'll be working to implement it. So we're working on design, and it'll include social media, videos of community members as well. So it does have a couple different components that'll be through September up until the election. So that is really kind of what our game plan will be. So any questions for me or concerns?
Councilwoman,
So I did get an email from a constituent yesterday, and so is this both the city and a county-wide effort, or is this just the city who's paying for this? Just because I know that we had to go through the county commissioners to ask that question.
City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, Councilwoman, this is a city-led initiative, given that we have one of the largest requests on the ballot. We are hopeful that Midwest and Edgerton will contribute and participate, but we did not make their participation a contingent arrangement for this to take place. And so, without a doubt, this is a City of Casper effort where we hope to get help with some of the other partners in the county.
We had this already budgeted.
Mr. Mayor, this is within our line item that we have toward this. We are paying for this out of other contractual in the city manager's office budget. And yes, the funding is there, and we anticipated this coming forward
We're talking about the advertising, so, correct?
for this contract.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Councilman Nell.
Thank you. And there was an article that's already been released in the paper, so let's be clear for everyone in the room and for our constituents, this was not a city council action. This was an action taken by the city manager's office. So I just want to make sure that's very clear, because we as council members are getting, a few of us are getting some emails already about these types of things, and this was a decision we were not involved in. So I want that very clear.
Councilman Gallagher.
I don't remember the number. How many feet or miles of the Midwest line are they replacing? Or will this project replace?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, Pete, do you remember how many miles exactly?
It's 2 blocks.
Well, we're talking about the water line, right?
Oh, pardon.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, everybody knows
Thank you.
Walnut,
To Poplar.
yeah.
So,
In terms of miles for the water line, however,
Yeah.
I need to get back to you on that if I could.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know whether we were needing, or they were
Wasn't it
needing to replace.
7?
What?
Wasn't it 7 miles?
Well, it for the, I'm sorry, for the, are you talking about the mileage for the?
Water line.
For the water, yes, that's 7 miles. That is
7
miles, okay.
Yes, I'm sorry. No,
Okay.
yes, it's 7 miles. It's the final 7 miles that goes, basically the east-west length that goes all the way to Midwest and Edgerton, to their water, to their water tank up there. So, that's that.
Okay, it's between the tank and the town?
It's from the tank all the way to the north-south line that goes kind of close to I-25, if you can imagine where that is.
From the pump station then to the water tank?
Pretty much, yes.
Okay.
I'll say that.
Okay.
So,
Councilman now.
Thank you. I want to
Thank you.
clarify something. And Mr. City Manager, I hope you don't feel like I was throwing you under the bus.
Oh, that's
Because I would certainly imagine that the council would have rallied and been behind you on this anyway. I guess the reason I stated that is because if there's any questions concerning why or how, they should be directed to the city manager's
You got it.
office and not to the council. That was the reason for my statement.
No problem.
I can clarify with you though, what were we not involved in?
We did not make the decision as a council to spend that money for this campaign. That was a decision made by the city manager's office and struck by his pen. And I'm not saying that we wouldn't have been behind him on it or that we wouldn't have approved it. I'm just saying that was not something we actually voted on or approved as a council. And so any questions that anybody has should be directed to the city manager. Am I correct, Carter?
That is fair,
Okay.
sure.
Is that something that would have been within your purview to spend anyways?
Right.
Yes, absolutely.
It's something that he would have been able to spend.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't need our approval.
Sure.
Exactly right.
Councilmember Pollock.
I just want to say that I think it's appropriate that we do this. If we're going to ask that this go on the ballot, I think it is very reasonable that we should be providing citizens with this information, whether they're for or against. They have a right to have clear and accurate information about what their money would be going to. And so I think this is a small investment in building that kind of rapport and that sort of transparency and trustworthiness with the community. So I wouldn't question the decision either way, because I think it's almost feel obligated to do it if we're going to ask for this to be on the ballot, that we give some effort towards educating voters about what they are going to be voting on.
And I'll just add to that, if anybody, they don't have to call the manager's office, you can call me. I'll be more than happy to answer questions, so, as far as I'm concerned. Anybody else? Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Appreciate it. Councilman Catherine.
Question, if it were approved in November, when then does the tax become effective?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, the tax would start then in January, the new year basically,
Okay,
and then it would terminate when the dollar value has been collected for both projects.
okay.
And that would be automatic, basically.
I'm trying to figure out, yeah, I've got a big purchase coming up.
Save it until if we get the tax, that way you can just pay that much more.
Yeah. Hey, they need to get it paid for before or after.
Well, for the
That
record,
way
I'm
it
all
shortens
for it.
up
I'm all
the
for the
timeframe.
6th. I'm all for it. I think it's desperately needed. The reason I made my statement was so that people knew where to direct their questions, because I'm getting inundated with them and I don't have the answers to them.
Sure.
So,
Well, and I guess I'm going to just expand on that a little bit. There are a lot of things, and the public needs to know, there's a lot of things that don't need to come to council because of the dollar figure amount.
Right.
We entrust the city manager to make those decisions. So if we were to question everything, anytime anything needed to be spent, if you needed to buy a fan belt out at the garage, are we all going to come down here and say, yes, you can go buy a fan belt?
Right.
We're
No,
not
I
going to do
agree.
that. So
I agree.
So I get it, and if people have questions about it, I'll be happy to answer them. But there's the answer right there. There's a dollar figure. he's authorized to do what he needs to do without asking us, so. That's where that's at.
Appreciate that.
Perfect. Anything else on that?
No, sir.
Okay, we'll move on to roof inspections. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A number of months ago, and this may have even preceded the time that the current council was seated, we had a gentleman approach the council from the floor suggesting that there was a bit of a disparity going on in our community as it relates to the dealing with roofs, particularly as it relates to the time period in which houses and homes are transacted between parties. The perfect example that this individual brought up and some of us in the room have experience with is at the time when a current owner is trying to sell a property and the new owner has the home inspected. Oftentimes what happens, as many of you know, the roof will be pointed at as being faulty and suggested that as a part of the transaction and maybe even as a part of the mortgage being taken on the home, the roof would need to be replaced. The disconnect that the individual who came forward to the council, shed light on was the fact that not always do those roofs always need to be totally replaced. And that in fact sometimes they can be repaired, sometimes they may not need to be replaced at all, and the homeowner that is selling is stuck with that cost as well as bad claim history to their homeowner's insurance, and the new homeowner, of course, is advantaged with a new roof. But then maybe in that same scenario 5 years later, if that person tries to sell their home and is told they need to replace a roof. So the disparity here, the problem that we have, and I'm sure it's not unique to Casper alone, is a couple things. First of all, the person that brought this forward indicated that there's really no standards in terms of what it is that people look for when they're replacing a roof, or whether or not the roof can be repaired or totally replaced. And so the standardization with regard to things that need to be the trigger points for a replacement is unclear. The other thing that was brought out in this conversation and dialogue is that indeed those who do these inspections may or may not be certified, nor are the individuals who replace the roofs necessarily licensed or certified or whatever. And so the topic brought up a lot of questions that this group has the opportunity to discuss and evaluate and provide direction one way or the other as it relates to how, in fact, the city could potentially provide answers to some of these vexing questions. And so with that, Mr. Mayor, we have our folks from the building department here tonight to answer any questions that might pertain to what currently is in play. The attorney's office has been involved in this conversation to deal with questions you might have about current ordinance. And without a doubt, we can take any homework we need to further flesh this conversation out, after tonight if council sees fit to do so.
So where do we want to start at? Councilman Cap.
I wanted to make sure you were looking at me and not
It's a
at
very deep
Bruce.
subject.
Are there any kind of standards for a certified roof inspector as an independent third party? Because I know insurance companies have their inspectors, and we have the general homeowner's inspection that you folks would call for a home inspection, and I think those are some of the places between the roofing contractor and the insurance companies and the home inspectors going, insurance companies going, no, it's a good roof. The home inspector's going, no, it's not. And so,
Mr. Elston.
Mr. Mayor and City Council, thank you for the opportunity to come before seems like I'm coming into jeopardy when I come into these, and the answer is, and I try and give that. I think a common misconception with the building department and our inspectors is we look at things per code, not per quality. So when you look at a roof, an insurance company or a home inspector might be looking at the quality, but we look at the code. For when we're inspecting a home, I'm gonna kind of spread out a little bit on framing, electrical, plumbing, those other things. We might see things that we don't really care for the quality, but it's per code. So anyhow, we need, by code, have to approve it. So we've had contractors, and this includes roofs, say, how can you approve something like that? Well, it's because it's per code. So that's what we do. We are certified through ICC, and we take ICC exams to be a certified inspector. And in that, roofs are a portion of the International Residential Code. So we inspect those roofs per code when they're done. If we have approximately more than 500 plus re-roofs a year in the city of Casper. That's a lot of roofs. And they are by code required to be permitted, but by code they're not required to be inspected. That's not in the residential code. But we do inspect them when they're called in. So we will, a lot of roofers will go in. You can have 20 plus roofs a day going in the city of Casper. It's not feasible to have a staff to be out there to inspect those roofs during the process, because to properly inspect it, you would have to do a mid-roof inspection after they pulled off the underlayment. And then when they put on the underlayment, inspect that, and then inspect the final inspection with the shingles. During that time, you could have a storm or delays in the inspector being there that can cause damage to the interior contents of the property. And that has happened actually even in the county that I'm aware of here recently, that the interior finishes were damaged because of waiting for an inspection. So anyhow, we look at the inspection, at a final inspection. We do that per code from the ground. We look at the flashing, the crickets, the drip edge, the ventilation, and to make sure that that's all installed correctly. If we see something from the ground that looks suspicious and we think we might need to get a closer look, there's a requirement of the contractor to supply us access to the roof. We'll call the contractor. We will go meet them there and climb on the roof to look at it, to see. But to inspect the nailing and pattern and all that, you know, that's concealed under as the shingles are put on. If we were to pull up shingles to look to see if the nailing pattern is proper, we're actually deteriorating the integrity of the roof that's just been installed. Also, we will look at any inspections that are called in during the process. A lot of contractors may call because of sheathing. They're not sure if the sheathing is going to be good enough, so they'll call us to see if we would require it to be redecked. Many times we do. So we'll do that. So we look at all the inspections that are called in for on that. So anyhow, but it's not feasible. I talked to 4 other jurisdictions within the state, and all of them pretty much follow the same process. Some of them will require photographs on a mid-roof inspection to have them do that. We don't do that at that time, but that's an avenue that we could look at. You know, is requiring photographs to be taken, and then when they can send that in when they request the final inspection. So there are some avenues to where we could tighten it up a little bit. But as far as the certification process, all the inspectors are certified through the IRC with our ICC certifications for inspecting the roofs per code. So when you do a change of ownership, it is not a code requirement to re-roof the home.
Unless it's 3-tap, correct?
No, there's not.
I thought when I sold my house, we had to re-roof it because the shingles that were on there there was nothing wrong with the roof, but they were out-of-date shingles or something?
No, with 3-tap shingles, or with T-lock shingles, they don't make them anymore.
Or T-locks.
So-
Correct.
So
But
if you
that's
have-
not a code requirement.
Yeah.
You say you put on 30-year T-lock shingles, and 5 years later sell your house, and they make you change that. That's not coming from the city of Casper.
So we understand that what we have as far as our inspectors and how their certifications are. So I guess the question would be, roofers in town or general inspectors altogether, are there any kind of requirements or certifications that are required for them in order to do their job?
We require roofing contractors to obtain a roofing contractor license. We have a test that was created out of the IRC that they can take in our office at no cost, and if they achieve a 75% passing grade, they can receive their contractor's license. But, and all the questions are out of the IRC. We do that also with plumbing, mechanical, and general contractor test also. In lieu of that, we will accept an ICC certified exam with a passing grade from there.
So one more question then. To take it beyond just roofing inspections, general inspectors, in the real estate world, we have general inspectors that will go through and do an overall inspection of a property and give a report back. Are they required by law to have take any kind of test or certification, pass any kind of testing before they could go to work as an inspector?
Not with the city of Casper.
Okay.
They're not certified with the city of Casper.
Okay. All right, thank you. That, I think that's what brought up this conversation. Roofing came up. I think a few months prior to that, we were talking about general inspectors altogether, and I can tell you from just on the roofing side of things, and I think this needs to actually be an overall discussion when it comes to inspections, period, whether it's roof or homes. But I'll give you a couple real quick scenarios. I can tell you one instance, and I really wish that things were moved a little bit further along, because I'd be able to show you a video, but right now I can't because it's tied up in other means, legal means. But you know, there's an individual that had 3 roofing inspections done on his house. First person goes up and says that it's a complete tear-off, needs to be completely redone. Second roofer goes up and does the same thing. Third roofer goes up and says, oh no, you know, it's a $2,000 repair job. So it's either a $15,000 tear-off or a $2,000 repair job. So he takes a $2,000 repair job. Well, what happens afterwards is that person does what most owners don't do. Most owners are not going to crawl up in the roof and verify that the work's been done. He gets up there and finds that what they've actually done is the damaged portion of the shingle. They went and cut it off, took it down, transferred on to new shingle, cut that, brought it back up, put tar on it, put it back on the roof. That was a repair, which it's not. The integrity of the roof is not there. So on some of these inspections, when these things happen, nobody questions whether or not these roofs actually need to be torn off, whether there's actually damage done to it. And so what we find, and I'm not going to speak for you, but I think you might agree with me, is that what we find a lot of times is that roofs get inspected and they're a complete tear-off. And that's a condition of selling a home. You have to give me a new roof or I'm not going to buy a home. So what happens? An insurance company gets involved and pays out you know, the price of replacing a roof. A brand new roof gets put on, when the reality behind it is it could have been maybe simply repaired, or maybe there was nothing wrong with the house. But nobody is educated enough to, not educated enough, but nobody, a lot of people don't know what to look for to get up there. You know, I bet 95% of the people don't get up there to look at the roof and see if the damage that is being said is actually there, if it actually is present. Why I say take it a step further when it comes to home inspectors, the same thing. We have a gamut. I would say there's 3 general type of inspectors in this town. There's the people that have been doing a long time and go in, and when they get done, they come back and they say, yeah, you got 2 things wrong with your home, and it's a 1-page report. Then you get somebody that comes in the middle of the road and they give you a 30-page report and say, hey, these are the things that are wrong with your home, and here's some things you should look at. But then you have people on the other extreme that go through and will take a picture of the damage, like a damage in the wall, and zero in on it and put it as damage on the south wall of a home. And that ends up being a 90-page report. And I know for a fact that the one person in town that does that takes pride in the fact that that report, when he turns it over, he knows that that deal is potentially done. It's killed. Because people are going to get that and they're going to say, man, this house is terrible. This is the worst house in the world, when the reality behind it is it's not. They're going to the extreme and making it seem that way. And so, to me, when it comes to inspections, I right now, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Elston, but right now, if I wanted to, tomorrow, I could go out and start up my own home inspection business. I would know nothing. If I knew nothing about construction, I could go out there and start it up tomorrow, and there is nothing that anybody's gonna do to stop me. I'm gonna go and charge people $350 every time I do it. I'm gonna hand them a report and say, this is what's wrong with your house. They're gonna pay me a check, and I'm gonna move on to the next one. I have to have zero experience.
Mr. Mayor and City Council, I can affirm that by personal experience with those that I know that are home inspectors, and they typically get a certification online. And it has nothing to do with the city of Casper. And again, they're looking more quality versus code. A lot of the inspectors do not understand the code, and they're looking at those things.
So if I can just finish up.
Absolutely.
real quick. I guess the point where I'm headed with this is to take it beyond roofing inspections. I'm against throwing a ton of regulations in there and saying, okay, by golly, the government's gonna tell you how to do business. But we see it on a daily basis, and people are faced with being given a report, and it's like, you better fix this stuff or else the deal's done. And this is people's livelihoods. This is a possibility of selling a home or not selling a home. This is the amount of money that you're putting into repairing things that you may not have to repair at all. And at the end of the day, if somebody wants a 90-page report and they want all this stuff fixed, well, go build a brand new house, because you're not getting a new home. So to me, there needs to be something in place that says, hey, you've taken this course, you've completed this course. It's no different than we talked about massage therapists. You have got to be able to show that you have the knowledge of doing this job. You've passed a class that says you've done this job, and whether we license them and give them money, charge them for the license or not, there needs to be something in place to say this person's knowledgeable in doing this, and they understand how to do this, and they're going to do it correctly. And right now, it's not there. Literally, any one of us could go out tomorrow and make a bunch of money, and it's just not right. Councilman.
I was just gonna piggyback on what you said. I just sold a house this year, and the inspector said, you need a new water heater, and you can't sell the house unless you replace it. So I called the plumber, he comes in, he says, there is nothing wrong with your water heater. Nothing. And I said, I called my realtor, and he's like, the inspector says it's gotta be changed. They're not gonna buy the house unless you change it. So we put a brand new water heater in for no reason whatsoever. The plumber told me, Bruce, I'm not comfortable. I said, you just got to do it. I got to get the house sold. So, to piggyback what the mayor is saying, I think if you want to be a contractor here, there are 3 different levels you have to go through of testing and work experience and everything else. I'm not saying it has to be that dramatic, but we should damn sure have a test or a certification process through the city in order for someone to be inspecting our homes. I think it's impossible. I mean, like you said, I'd go be a home inspector tomorrow, and I don't know a whole lot about building a house. So that wouldn't be good. So I think we should have some form of certification process for our home inspectors. And I'm not trying to over-involve the government either, but people have to know that what they're getting is somebody with at least enough appropriate knowledge that they were able to be certified through the city of Casper. We make our contractors do it. Why wouldn't we make our home inspectors do it?
Councilwoman Ingram.
So, just with the codes and stuff, I've always kind of had an issue with all of this. Recently, though, I did have a roof inspected. It was damaged beyond repair, T-locks, all the 9 yards. Asked for a new roof. The realtor on the other side called some company out of Colorado. They did pull a permit, it did get inspected. It is the messiest roof you've ever seen, and that company damaged the roof. There's literally holes in the roof, but it passed code. I have all the paperwork, it passed code. It is the sloppiest roof, so it was so sloppy from the ground, we were like, does this pass? But it did. And then I had my roofer go back up, and he said, this is one of the sloppiest roofs I've seen. It's going to pass code, though. So, not a lot we can do, because it was sloppy, but it passed. So, my issue is that you can get 10 different roofers, you'll get 10 different roofing reports. You pull 10 different HVAC companies, you get 10 different reports. There isn't a lot of consistency, so it's based off of probably company policy and different kind of things. Even electrical, a lot of times you're going to get a different kind of report. So it's across the board. It's not just roofs. It's just literally across the board regarding how we proceed with the sale of a home and who to get for the reports. I personally like the trades myself because they deal with it all day long, versus a general, but, that's just me. It's difficult, and it's always been difficult to get a consistent information regarding one single item in a home. It is very difficult. And we've got this international building code, which honestly, every single one of them falls to. I mean, they all pass code. It's just that everybody has a different opinion. And I think that's kind of where it's all at, is it's just a difference of opinion. Maybe if we had them all take a test, maybe that would weed out some of the worst ones or whatever else. I don't know. I tend to try to not use bad companies.
Yeah, well, how do you know though?
Right.
I do know that there are some certification courses out there, and they're not just fly-by-night certification courses. There's actual courses for home inspection, and I don't know, Ms. Grierson, again, if that's something that can be implemented at our level of requiring somebody to complete a series of courses, or like we did massage therapy, amount of hours or something like of training before they can get a certification or a license to be a general inspector.
Mr. Mayor and City Council, I understand the conversation that's gone here, but our inspectors are all masters in their craft. It takes them 10 years to achieve that. And I'm just speaking out loud, thinking out loud, if we are going to create certifications for home inspectors and have them go through the city of Casper to get certified, it's not a quick process, because they're looking at electrical, plumbing, mechanical, framing, structural, and all those things. We have master electricians, master plumbers, and master general contractors that are on staff now. I am not sure if what this is going to create. I think it's going to be a process that needs to be thought through, as far as if we were to look at certifying inspectors and they go out in the name of the city and say, I'm certified to say that you need to do this.
And I'm not necessarily saying that, but without mentioning a name, there is one general inspector that I work with quite often, and he has completed a certification of coursework himself. So it's nothing that would be run through the city itself.
Okay.
But to be able to go and say, I've done this course, I put so many hours into it, there's certain sections I had to cover, I've covered all of those, I've got my certification, and then they bring that back to us, and we say, okay, this person's certified to be a general inspector in our community.
Sure.
And he keeps referring to the massage therapist, because in that ordinance, we required them to have X number of hours and have passed a national exam similar to what an engineer has to do. And so that was kind of what you were referring to, and if there was anything along those lines is really what he's talking about.
Mr. Mayor and City Council, I also believe in doing that certification, that people would be able to identify those items which are code related and which are not, which are quality related, which I believe that would be a great benefit to the buyers or sellers.
Well, it's not on the city. It's not like the city's giving them a permit. It's no different than an HVAC guy that comes in. He's got to take a test, and the city has to rubber stamp it and say, yes, that's all we're asking for here, is not for you to certify them or call them city employees. They're just doing a job that you know they've passed enough required work. And if it's a brand new house, I could go inspect it, because I know everybody that's been on that house has passed. They know what they're doing. These people are inspecting homes that were built in 1920 here in Casper, and expected to make judgment calls on nobody that's probably even alive that worked on that house.
Sure.
And so I think for your department to at least verify that they've had a specific amount of training or something, I think protects the homeowner better, and it just seems like an absolute no-brainer to me.
Can I ask a
Go ahead.
question? From my understanding, this is a Wyoming thing, it's not a Casper thing, to where you don't have to be certified to be a home inspector and stuff, is that correct?
I could not speak for other jurisdictions working on their own inspections. I'm not sure.
think anybody could be an inspector anywhere in the state.
I'm sure they can, but we can certainly be more restrictive than
Right.
what the state is.
Mhm.
Just like our therapy ordinance. And actually, all we're doing is checking their credentials. We aren't really
Right.
testing them or anything else.
That's right.
And if they bring in the credentials, then you're good.
Okay.
And that would be something that if we could figure out, and it may be Mr. Elliston's ideas of who, or the gentleman there, what courses are out there, what kinds of certifications you can get, and then we could sit down and decide that, okay, we will accept this one's as far as certifications are concerned, and go from there. That may be a way of, but again, I don't have the knowledge to know what are out there for home inspectors.
If it's your pleasure, I could certainly do that for you.
Sounds good.
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
And I will help you do that.
Thank you for standing up there. We appreciate it.
Anybody else have any?
Yeah, Dan's gonna go home tonight and go, why did I say I
Councilman? Any council people online have anything for this?
No. Thank you.
Or else
we're
she's
messaging
Really
her.
good at standing still.
Very good standing still. Okay.
I think we might have lost Amber.
We're messaging her now to make sure
She's a manic.
still connected.
She's put a picture up and seen license are gonna be ready.
Whoops, there we go. Now we're back.
Okay. Okay, anything else on this one? I guess I would ask if we could maybe expand this from, as long as everybody's good with it, expand it to a further discussion beyond roof inspections to general inspection, to include roofs, but general inspections of houses, and then we'll find out what kind of courses are out there that we could actually make certification courses.
And I think Dan volunteered to do that. Did you not?
He said he would love to do it.
Oh, yeah, well, it sounds good, absolutely.
You're welcome.
Anything else?
No.
We need to talk to you before you leave.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it needs to go beyond roofs.
Yeah. Okay, well, we'll move on to agenda review. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Turning to your grid document, that hopefully you have in front of you. I'm looking at the meeting of the 17th. We have a couple items in the pre-meeting we wanted to go over with you that evening, one of which would be the budget amendment number 1. The vast majority of which has no new information with it. It's really pretty mechanical in terms of carrying projects forward that haven't been completed, as well as trying to carry forward directives that you gave us from the budget work sessions back in May. As for the next topic, the school district would like to come in and talk to us about tennis courts, and they have a proposal they'd like to entertain with the council. And so that would be your opportunity to hear that proposal and potentially give direction if you see fit. Other than that, we'll be going through the second reading of the back 9 rezone, and a number of other items, but not many of which I would say are real challenging. Well, one of the other things we're going to bring forward to you in the pre-meeting is a preview with regard to the vehicle purchases that you see in here, primarily out of solid waste, because that's a fairly big purchase request, and so we'd like to make sure if you have any questions, we can tackle those in the pre-meeting, because that'll likely be on consent. The meeting of the 24th, we've got a couple interesting items coming forward for you. We're getting to the point where liquor license number 5 is due to come and report back to this council. This would be the license that's held by Travis Taylor, which is located at the Commissary Mall. However, the owner of the Commissary Mall would like to run a proposal by you, and that would in fact use that license with regard to plans that they have for that building. And so the timeline that Mr. Taylor was to come back to you was on the 7th. Obviously, this is just before that, and so this conversation will frame what it is that you do with that license, particularly along the lines of the timeline that you set recently for that discussion. The missing persons legislation is a follow-up item. Council asked us to do some follow-up with regard to another person that came forward in one of your regular meetings, where they asked you to look into the possibility of what can be done about not just missing persons, but in fact the follow-up that is ostensibly not taking place as it relates to missing persons and public access to that information and so on. We have some legislation that we'd like to discuss with you that might help deal with that conundrum here in Wyoming. The Audubon Society has a request as well that the city could potentially participate in, or at least be a party to, as it relates to restoring the wetland that's adjacent to Morad Park. That wetland has been, they call it a dead zone as it relates to a lot of the original species that have been in that wetland historically. And so they've got a project in mind that, again, the city can be a party to as it relates to trying to restore that wetland. And so that request will be coming forward for your consideration as well. Beyond that, I like to always invite you to look at the rear page, the final page, if you will, of this document, so you can see which items are on the docket, if you will, for future work session agendas or pre-meeting agendas, particularly in the sense that if you see something that might be missing or would like to add something, this would be the opportunity to do just that. And that's my report, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Anybody else got anything on that?
I don't know whether it wants to come now or council around the table, but I was visiting with a gentleman today, and he said that we are now requiring a site-specific soil analysis, a structural engineer sign-off, and an architect sign-off to build a house.
Mr. Elston? Good, Meg.
Mayor, City Council, I made it to Final Jeopardy here. So.
Not quite.
Not quite. I see. We do require a soils report, and that's been by city ordinance for many years. If your lot is not in a subdivision, but it's an independent lot that you buy someplace, and that soils report allows us to know what type of footings are going to be required for the structure. We do require drawings for the home, so which are typically, them drawings can be purchased online. People purchase them in numerous places, and so we do require the drawing and the soils report. If you have a subdivision that has been done, typically there is a soils report for the total subdivision that encompasses all the lots, so you don't have to do an individual soils report for each lot. A lot of those soils reports are done. They're not a very extensive report. It's just basically as a contractor, I used to go and dig a hole the depth that I was going to be excavating for the home, and they would come out, a soils engineer would come out, look at it, and determine by the soils what type of footings it would be, or whether it needed to be caissons. So in your subdivisions, your new subdivisions, there's a soils report that encompasses all the lots. If you buy an individual lot, a soils report is required.
Even if there's one on either side of it?
You know, we have places in this town where you have water running through one lot and not through the next and through the next. So they are independent, so yes.
But if he would have bought a lot in a subdivision,
That already had a soils report.
and they may take
Submit.
4 soils reports for, I don't remember how many borings there were for Eastgate 3, but I know that was satisfactory at the time. And that was, again, that was 30 years ago. But that's what I'm trying to figure out is, if I have a soils report here, these are my 3 lots, and I've got one here and one here, what's the difference then between that and one that's over here and one that's over here and one that's over here, just because it was in a subdivision?
I can speak from experience as a contractor on the street coming off Eagle Drive over in Wolf Creek, as I worked on that street, that there would be a house with caissons, a house with spread footings, a house with caissons, and a house with spread footings. They changed by lot all the way through there. We do require this also, as we're all aware of the Mesa del Sol subdivision and what took place there. And this is for the protection of the homeowner and the protection of their
Well, and see, I knew at the time, if I would have been in, I think it's Sunrise 7, up where Walnut and some of those are, that those were all site-specific there.
Sure.
But in Eastgate, they were willing to take the subdivision-wide, so to speak.
And the subdivisions are done through the engineering department, so I can't specifically
Okay.
speak on how many bore samples that they do and where they do, but I'm assuming they get a general, probably a specific idea of what the formations are and the depths, to where they know that they don't need to do it every
Well,
lot, that they can follow them formations and depths to find out what they need to do on each specific lot.
Okay. Because I was just concerned that we were driving the price up by having to have an individual lot, an architect and an engineer all sign off on a set of house plans, that adds probably $15,000 to the cost of a house. And that's why I was concerned about that.
I can speak from experience, it's not $15,000 for those reports and the drawings, but anyhow, but there is some cost for it. And it is for the safety and the assurance to the homeowner in the end. And it has been required for the last 30 years I've been working in council.
Mr. Mayor, while we have Mr. Elston, I was gonna come to your office tomorrow, but we could probably take care of this right now. Electrical contractor called me this morning. Apparently there's some new GFIs that are now being required, and they can't get them. So he asked me to ask you, what are they supposed to do? Because it's,
We work that on a case-by-case scenario, and if they're not available, we don't stop construction. We
Okay.
want it to continue, so we will allow, actually, we're still in the process of adopting the 2021 codes, and there will be a grace period and such until any products aren't available, we make allowances.
so I'll just have them call you then.
Yes.
Great,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, legislative review?
Mr. Mayor, there's a couple things coming forward, one of which I just mentioned to you, in the form of the missing persons legislation, and, you know, if indeed Casper's gonna carry that forward, we will need your blessing in that regard. There's also a state level, effort or initiative, if you will, as it relates to, bias crimes and whatnot. We had some stakeholders in that discussion talk to us the other day, and I at this point in time, I'm simply giving you a heads up that that may be a direction staff would need as well in advance of the legislation that is coming together potentially for this legislative season. And so that's just a couple previews that we've been participating in here lately. As it relates to local legislation, I have a meeting with the LGBTQ committee, the mayor's committee, coming up here soon, and we'll talk about ordinance level legislation on that front also. So a couple things from a legislative standpoint to have you put on your radar, if you will. That's it.
Okay. All right, we'll go council around the table. Councilmember Pollock.
I don't have anything tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Councilman Gamera.
I also don't have anything.
All right. Councilman Cathy.
Pass.
Councilman Nell.
I have nothing, sir. Just one question. Have we seen any scooters yet? I'm just curious.
No, not yet. I think they're slated to come the end of the month. Is that
I
right?
think they were thinking the end of the month. We have a meeting on Monday with the district manager who will be overseeing Casper. And it's not the gentleman we've been speaking to, Mr. Caboto, but some other individual. So Monday morning we'll get a little bit better idea, and we'll have I think Sergeant Bullard and maybe either Deputy Trini or Police Chief Peters there as well.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Ingebretson.
Nothing for me tonight.
Councilman Johnson.
Nothing tonight.
Vice Mayor Pacheco.
Several items. Just kidding, I have no idea.
All right. I did a welcome speech for the Masons on Monday. And I had a meeting this afternoon with, there's a lot of community groups who deal with youth in the community, and so we've had some discussions on some of this recent acts of vandalism downtown and how to address that. So, and I guess I'll bring that up too. It's it seems like we've had some constant issues happening down at David Street Station, which is unfortunate because we're at a point where the damage is starting to outweigh the events. And just to shed light on a few things, there's a hand dryer that was torn off of a wall in a bathroom at David Street. This past weekend there was a gentleman going around town that was building sandcastles for an event. Somebody came along and just walked right through the middle of it, destroyed it. So it's just ridiculous activity taking place, and it really needs to come to an end, or else some of these events are going to come to an end. So it's unfortunate, but I would just ask that if people see things like that taking place, you know what the number to the police department is, and give them a call if it's acts of vandalism and it needs to end. So other than that, that's all I've got. So, all right, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good night, everyone.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, Dan.
Thank you, Dan.